going to create these little vertical ruffles, just working individually as little stripes and then applying them on our cake. So what I've done here is I've cut out a strip of fondant that is 1 inch wide, and it's about 1.5 inches to 2 inches taller than the cake. So my cake is 5 inches, so this is cut at about 6.5 inches or so. What we're going to do is lay that on my little pad I have here. I'm using this little sugar shaper, and I'm going to, I love this pointed one. Now you can do this with different tools, but I'm using a sugar shaper because I just like the texture that I get with it. You can use a ball tool though if you prefer. And I'm just doing a back and forth motion along the edge, and it's giving me this great little frilly design. So you just work all the way up, again back and forth, and I'm pressing really firmly because I want to squish and thin my fondant, which gives me that beautiful little delicate ruffle. So pressing firmly and rolling back and forth, and then picking up and moving back and forth all the way to the edge. And then you'll go ahead and do the same thing on the other side to create, obviously you want them done on both sides, and then you'll let that sit aside and rest. And then I've got 2 here that I've done for you, and these are already frilled, and they've been just resting for a little while. What you'll do too is after you get both sides done, is I just take the stripe and I start to just kind of ruffle it up a little bit. That's why you want it a little bit longer than the height of the cake. It's because you want to just add a little bit more just ruching, I guess. And then what I've done is I've taken my stitching tool from PME, and I've grabbed a little, like a straight edge of some kind, and I actually go ahead and mark. It might be easier to show someone that hasn't been done. So I go ahead and mark my center just a little bit with my tool, and then I line up my straight edge, and that gives me a nice line to go ahead and stitch all the way across. You'll stitch it all the way up. So that's how I get my stitch done first. It's good to do that first because it's a lot harder to do it when it's up on the cake. And then what you can do too is go ahead and grab the edges, and you just kind of pull them up a little bit and fluff them. And then again, you can let that rest and sit it off to the side and do a few of these so that they're a little bit more structurally sound. They're not going to harden up super fast. If you want to mix a little tylose into your fondant, you can. This is something that definitely needs to be done with a fondant. It doesn't work with modeling chocolate. Modeling chocolate doesn't have elasticity to frill like that, so it definitely needs to be a fondant medium. So once you have your little frills, I'm actually going to show you how to finish the back of this cake. So when you come around, so you're going to line up your ruffles, and when you come around, you'll want to stop at least 2 or 3 stripes from the end, and you'll measure that gap, and you'll want to divide it evenly so it doesn't look like there's a seam in the back. So that's what I've done. And then you're going to add a little piping gel. You can also use a little bit of water, and I'm just going to piping gel just where my center is going to go. You don't need to do the whole cake. Okay. And then we'll start at the bottom, and we're going to lay it right up against the edge of this one because we want them to touch. As you can see right here, they almost touch, and what it does is it creates more of a texture versus a vertical stripe. If you put much gap in there, it really creates more of a vertical stripe, and it has just a little bit harsher of a look. It still looks beautiful, but it doesn't give you quite the texture it does if you kind of put them right up against each other. So I'm just going to kind of hold it from the top and allow my little ribbons to ruffle a little bit, like that. And then you want to put your straight edge back up there, and just make sure that your stitch line is kind of in the middle so that you know that your little ruffle is straight. And the reason why this one's a little darker is because it's still really fresh, whereas these have dried. They've been on here for a little while, so they're a lot firmer. And then you can grab your little tool and fluff those edges up even more, like this. Kind of pull them up and even pull them together if you want them to touch a little bit more. Slide it over. So what's nice about the piping gel, it allows you to manipulate the stripes a little bit. So I'll just show you guys one more. See, I didn't measure actually that well. There's a little bit of a gap, which is why it's the back. So normally, actually for me, what I would do at this point is I would just cut another strip because you've got your fondant out, you've been cutting strips, so I would just remeasure this last one and make it just slightly bigger, refrill it and stick it on. That way you can hide those gaps right there in the seam. So check my little stitching seam, make sure it's pretty straight, and that looks great. If you want to re-stitch it a little bit, maybe you've lost some of that stitching seam by pressing, you can just take your tool and just carefully move it right back up the cake, all the way to the top, like that. Now to add the little dragées, again, this is something you don't have to do, but I like the extra little, it just adds an extra little delicate touch. So I grab a little piping gel and I just add a little dot of piping gel where I want my ruffles to go, or my little dragées. And then I would just take one using a little toothpick, or I'm sorry, a tweezer. And I would just stick that on there with the tweezer and kind of press it into the cake, like that. And then you would obviously go ahead and line those all up on your cake. So that's how I created this little textured ruffled cake. And I paired it with I have some gradient fondant here, and I added lots more random dragées to the top of this cake. A fun variation would be to create, instead of the vertical lines, you can actually go ahead and create these almost like a quilted design. And I did the same technique with frilling the edges. I just cut my strips only about 1/2 inch, and then I just layered them. I kind of worked like this, back and forth motion, and I just layered them right onto my cake using this back and forth zigzag motion to create this little quilted pattern. And you can notice I actually just ruffled them up a little bit more, kind of laying them more on top of each other than I did here. Right here, they're more flatter. So this way I just kind of laid it out more. I saw this on a bedspread, actually, and I love this design, and I would love to see you guys put this on a cake. So whoever does this, make sure you post me a picture and show me how you create this beautiful little quilted design on a cake.